Ryan, my name is Andrew, and I'm really glad to have you on today. So before we get started, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about your story and where you're from and stuff like that.
Yeah, so originally I'm from Las Vegas, born and raised. I know it's a little bit crazy to hear that, but originally from Las Vegas, born and raised, and been out here in Hong Kong for about 7 years now, going on 7 years, which will make me a permanent resident here, which is it's pretty great. I don't have to submit my application every year or every other year for a renewal of my visa on my passport. So I'm looking forward to that. But other than that, no, it's been great out here, obviously developing the business and just serving the community here in Hong Kong. But originally, like I said, from Las Vegas, spent quite a bit of time obviously traveling the world before I came to Hong Kong, and built quite a good kind of network and community here in Asia. And obviously when it comes to my I guess my roots, I've got Korean roots from my mother's side, and my father is a California boy, but with German and Norwegian roots as well. So
No way.
I spent some time in Europe for a little bit, and eventually kind of made my way over to here, over to Korea, and just kind of got my feet wet. So yeah, it's been quite a journey, and here we are in Hong Kong, and I've been running the business here for about 5 years, and we opened up our own studio actually July of this year here in the heart of Central in the business district, which has just been fantastic. So that's pretty much it.
Well, dang, dude, what brought you out to Hong Kong?
Okay, so yeah, it was like I said. I mean, I was traveling quite a bit. I was always kind of in the industry of I guess just helping people change and helping maximize people in some way. And I really found kind of a passion for that very, very early on. But before I came here, actually, again, like I said, I was kind of working, coaching. But after I left Vegas, which was around 2000 and when was that? 2000. I want to say 2000, end of 2008, 2009. I started working on cruise ships. And so they got large commercial cruise lines like Princess Cruise Lines and Crystal Cruise Lines. The title was fancy, and which really means nothing, but enrichment lecturer. So I was teaching I was teaching a wide range of different courses for the passengers and also the officers and staff in the cruise line, which is it's a whole different world, man. It's a floating hotel that you live and you work in, and it's just it's insane, man. I feel like we need a whole other video interview to talk about the craziness that is cruise ships.
Schedule that for sure.
So I did that for about 3.5 years on and off. And when I wasn't working contracts on cruise lines, I was traveling, I was abroad, I was going back home to visit family and friends. But through that time, like I said, I was developing kind of a great network of just friends and family kind of around the world. And I think maybe, as you know, the more you travel, the more you get that kind of travel bug, right? And you realize that, how interesting the world can be. And I think, sure, Vegas will always be my home, but I think, I wanted more. I always knew that I wanted more. And I also realized that in terms of Vegas, I wasn't really progressing in my life there in a sense. So in fact, I think it was one of the best things that I did was make that decision to leave and better myself. And again, same kind of thing, a whole nother conversation for another time. But it did help me later on in life as a coach and as a movement and health coach in terms of understanding, just the darker sides and the gluttonous sides of what Vegas can be. So yeah, it's basically at that point I decided, okay, let's come out to Asia. And at that time I was dating a lovely young girl and friend now, who had family friends out here as well. So that made it a little bit easier in terms of just transitioning. But coming out here together and kind of starting a new life, and again starting to serve the community here in Hong Kong.
Got it, dude. That's quite a ride. So how did you get started into, what was your entry point into itself?
Into what? Sorry.
Into fitness, your fitness.
Okay. Yeah. So I'd always played sport growing up. I was always, I think, God, ever since I can remember, both of my parents were avid tennis players. So we'd ever since I was able to hold a tennis racket, I was on the course, man. And
Yeah.
so, and I played baseball and American football, and so I was always kind of, sport or I think that space was always very familiar to me. So I think it was only later in life, again, once I started working with people in terms of friends and family, I think for a lot of us that I started to realize, okay, this is something that, one, I seem to have a knack for. At the same time, it's something that I really enjoy, right? I think it's that level, that deep level of happiness that we reach, or that we realize when we serve others, right?
Yeah.
So it really just started with family. Well, obviously friends and stuff, but it really started with family in terms of just helping my father and a few other family members, and my mom on my father's side. And really seeing that change, sometimes immediate, sometimes, over the long term, that really meant something, it was for me. And I think at that point, it was a no-brainer for me. There was no kind of, question about it. So
was there a specific definitive moment that you knew that you wanted to coach for the rest of your life, or that was a for you?
Well, I always knew that I think even from high school, even before high school, and probably middle school growing up, that I enjoyed kind of living life by my own rules, and kind of not kind of, I knew that I didn't want to work for anybody. And that was, I think I realized that maybe in high school. Yeah. So I did that. I worked a lot of different jobs, but originally my background is in IT and information technology. So I was a total closet nerd. I played Magic the Gathering growing up, and
StarCraft,
while playing sports. And that was StarCraft, totally hours, just so many wasted hours of StarCraft.
Yeah, right.
Oh my God. I'm not at the level of those Koreans though, man. Some of the Koreans, man, they're next level, man. But anyways, yeah, that's originally my background. So I had this, very technical background that's again helped me, I think in my leaps and bounds with developing my business, but also saving a lot of money when it comes to things like web design and coding, and you know what I mean? So that's just work people don't want to do. And it's, for me, it's very easy for me. So I think that was one of the benefits of being able to have that background, that educational background, is to carry over into the business. But as I said, worked a lot of different jobs, from sales to again, IT to, God, what else did I do? Just a lot of different jobs. And I think if I wouldn't have left Vegas, who knows, man, I probably would have been working out there, coaching, or who knows, maybe been a bartender or a Chippendales dancer, man, who knows?
Right. If life choices turned out, these are laughs of recognition. So I'm so clear on that. And that, that's such a great position too, in terms of, being a coach now. Who do you find it most fulfilling to serve? Is there a specific demographic that you like to work with?
I'm finding right now, and again, it may change. You talk to me in another year or 5, whatever that is. But right now, I'm finding my knack, or the place that seems to fit and flow for me, is working with I don't like to say older populations, but sure. I mean, if you want to just look at, as you look at certification courses, like older populations certification course, I'm like, okay. I love working with those who are just done with the whole kind of, maybe not the hustle bustle, but they're just done with the partying. They're done with the Friday, Saturday night, just smashing it and just kind of making up for it on the following week. And I've realized that for me, I'm more geared towards, and I seem to fit better with a lot of those clients who are in it for the long game. And they've done that, and they've realized that maybe it didn't work or wasn't sustainable. So, and I just gel a lot better with those types of clients. But obviously, I wouldn't know that unless I've worked with, all the different age kind of demographics. But where I'm at right now, I seem to fit in kind of best with these types of clients right now. So I would say maybe over 30, I would say the over 30 clients here in Hong Kong. I don't know how it is in the US now, or Vegas, but I know Vegas is very different, but certainly in Hong Kong.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's great that you start to recognize that at some point, you enter the conversation of sustainability, which is what you mentioned. And interestingly enough too, you mentioned that there are certain credentials or certifications that may be beneficial to work with that specific demographic. Can you speak a little bit more to that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, there's a lot of great companies out there that offer certification courses online or even in workshop based courses for older populations or specific populations. So I certainly see there is a need for that. I think, as we know, statistically speaking, but when working as an educator now for NASM, for a few other companies, you're finding now more of the older, I would say, let's just say the moms and dads, or the ones who are kind of in a job now and they're looking to leave their job, their vocation to get into this kind of space of health and wellness. They're looking to work with the older population, so their moms and their dads and their grandmas and their grandpas. To build in that long-term happiness, that long-term kind of quality of life. They need just as much help as we do, right? So absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there's obviously, you can just Google those certifications, right, and you can find those special populations, older populations in terms of certifications.
Yeah. Are there any that you specifically, which ones would you recommend for people that are looking to pursue some further education? Because I'm sure that you could agree, maybe not, that there is such a wide range of certifications that it becomes kind of hard to identify which ones are actually credible and which ones are pretty valid. So in your experience, do you have any recommendations for that?
Yeah, I mean, Gray Institute has some pretty good stuff. I mean, not specifically on older population, but again, just looking at the body, and again, it's just a very different way in terms of, meeting the client where they need to be met. And I think that's kind of this whole theme. Again, kind of later on, we'll explore in terms of the training philosophy is always kind of removing those biases or those kind of impressions that we tell ourselves as trainers or as coaches, and really just trying to understand that person right there and now, to understand what they need most right now in their lives. So I think in terms of certification, sure, NASM, I think National Academy of Sports Medicine has one specifically for all populations, but Gray Institute they're always pumping out a lot of great content. I mean, I think I would just start there first, and just kind of go from there. I mean, I haven't really done any more research, to be honest, on any other certifications for that. Yeah. I'm happy to look into it and get back to you if I need to.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, like everything, and that's the great thing about the questions is that there's no right answer or anything like that. It really is just about your own experiences, because the conversation of world trainers is going to be your own unique perspective. And that's a great segue into what is your perspective on fitness? Like, do you have a training philosophy that kind of is the underpinning of how you operate as a coach?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's certainly always in this kind of underlying theme of, it's a lot, but it's certainly one that always kind of, that I like to bring into the space that we have here in Hong Kong is always meeting the client where they need to be met. And that's just not from a macro cycle or these very technical terms, but just on a day-to-day basis, and that could be anything from understanding that you're working with a mom and dad or a mom that's coming in who has a full-time job and obviously has kids, and the biggest thing that she would need most that day is for someone maybe to help her with her grocery list, or someone to help her get that food delivered to her home, and not just smash her with, say, burpees or whatever sort of training program that you have in mind, before she walks in. So really meeting that person at a human level. Because I think that's kind of where we need to be at this point, to differentiate ourselves as movement professionals is becoming that new breed, that kind of leveled up breed of trainer or coach that is truly serving the client obsessively, almost to that level of again, really maximizing them on that day when you see them. Yeah. And like I said, that can just be saying, hey, I know you're real busy. You're not going to be able to get a healthy access, access to a healthy meal. What can I do? Can we come up with some solutions and maybe get you, Hong Kong out here right now, the meal delivery service it's just taking off. And it's extremely convenient. And, that's, I think, one of the biggest issues with environment is that a lot of these clients are walking back to offices and they're, the environment is just not conducive to a lot of their fitness and health goals. So how can the coach, jump in and at the end of the day and serve them better to say, hey, why don't we get you a meal delivered? So by the time you're in, this session's over, if they're going through active recovery, they're doing some foam rolling in between sets, let's together come up with a solution in terms of getting you that energy that you need to be able to fuel the next 24 hours with your kids or whatever that is, So yeah, getting back to that, to answer your question, sorry about that, is just kind of meeting the client where they need to be met, in the now, not just from a goal perspective of 30 days and 60 days. Let's look at them, as an opportunity every single day that you see this client to visit their lives and really truly serve them as a coach, as a trainer, as a movement professional.
Yeah. And earlier you mentioned the sustainability aspect. Does that play a large role in, and you mentioned the theme of, 30, 60 days is not your game. So the long-term, bigger picture seems to be your game plan. Is that pretty safe to say?
Yeah, no, I think it's always important, obviously, to have those shorter term kind of destinations, right? And you speak to your clients' wants and obviously their needs, to in a sense create that emotional buy-in in a sense, right? But obviously, as a coach, we're in this for the long game, and we hope that at some point, once they've achieved those goals, those shorter term goals, that it just becomes a part of who they are. And I think that's one of the coolest parts about what we do is to see that transformation, not only, physically, but mentally, emotionally, spiritually, what have you, where it just becomes a part of their identity. And they just do it because it just becomes a part of who they are. And that for me is where the magic is, man. That's just magic.
Yeah. I mean, and that's so great so it's really a means of access to living a more fulfilled life is kind of what I hear behind that. That's really awesome. So then you mentioned that in Hong Kong, the workplaces aren't conducive typically to having that healthy kind of lifestyle. It sounds like Hong Kong may have some different or unique challenges that are involved. What's unique? What are some of those unique challenges that you face over in Hong Kong, or that you see that are unique to your specific area?
I'd say, I mean, I've been all over the world, Andrew, and I'd say that it would certainly be just the density, the density of the city is insane. I mean, it's all up. Everything is up. You know what I mean? And when you have this many people in this such a small area like this, concentrated area like this, it creates feelings of isolation. It creates feelings of loneliness, and at the same time, it just amplifies stress to a whole nother level like I've never seen before.
Wow.
And so it's stress, and I think so. Stress is just, I and like I said, I've grown up in Vegas. I've been in different cities, and I've never seen it like this, where it's just the hustle, the eagerness, it's just amplified. And when your social circles, as we know, or your environment kind of, it's normalized in your social circles, it just gets worse and worse and worse. Yeah. And so I think the biggest issue, I'd say, with the environment is just the stress. It's almost, there's certainly this work hard, kind of play hard, and it would kind of feeds into this kind of all or nothing, black and white kind of axiom. And there are implications for that, as you know, and they're just stressed and they're just busy, and I particularly don't like that word busy. I don't like to use that word either, but
sure.
It's just, so I see stress as one of the biggest limiting factors for my clients, my community, and just, the people here in Hong Kong, when they're trying to change their bodies or change their lives, they're not addressing the stress. Sleep, recovery, as we say, chase recovery, these, relaxation techniques, they're not sexy. And I don't, I hope over the next 5 to 10 years, I'd like to see the industry go more towards that. And I know that there's certain places in the world now that are kind of getting a little bit closer to that, but I don't see it here right now. It's still kind of this, you worked 12, 13, 14 hours. It's, first one in, last one out. It's this badge of honor in a sense, and it's just trashing people's journey.
Yeah. So have you, I guess that's very interesting in terms of, you mentioned stress, and then you mentioned earlier helping the mom carry groceries or trying to arrange a
Mm,
meal. So
yeah.
how much of your time is spent dealing with people's stress, and how do you effectively, or what are your best practices for helping people manage their own stress when they're not with you?
I think a lot of times it's about building in, right? Building in a lot of these different techniques and strategies
Yeah.
into their lives, where they're able to downregulate.
Mhm.
And so if that's just through, we can say meditation. We don't even have to go that woo woo. We can just call it just breathing. Just focus on breathing. Check out for 1 minute. Have a time for yourself to just check in, a head to toe kind of scan, in a sense. You could, there's so many different techniques.
Yeah.
So we're very much kind of following this idea of just experimenting and just trying what works best for you and finding what works best for you.
Yeah.
We're certainly not one of those companies that is, obviously one size fits all. And I think I would speak on behalf of many of the world trainers here in this community that I think that's what differentiates us from the rest, is that, we're certainly very client centered in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I think in terms of stress, again, it has to be looked at a lot like we look at our programming with our clients, and a lot like, our program design in terms of when they're going to deadlift, when they're going to do leg day, upper body isolation work, whatever that is. When are we going to de-stress? When are we going to downregulate? And what is that going to look like? So, and that starts with assessment. So the questions I like to ask from day one is, what is your relationship with rest and recovery? And, if these people are coming to us and I'm asking these questions, and they're like, oh, what are you doing for rest and recover right now? Nothing. Okay. Well, you just want to give me your money and just, I'm going to work my magic hands and just fix you somehow. And they're like, well, yeah. And I'm like, okay, well, get out. Yeah. No, but you know what I'm saying, right? So that's one of the first questions I ask them. Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool.
But it's an opportunity for us. I think it's a wonderful opportunity, coaching opportunity for us to meet them where they're at and just say, listen, in order for us to get you to squat consistently, we need to address the stress consistently. And there's obviously plenty of literature and plenty of research out there in the field of neurobiology to show what is happening when they're obviously overly stressed or chronically stressed. The brain reverts to a very instinctual habit-based pathway, and it doesn't matter how much you tell them to squat, how much you tell them to do whatever it is. It's not gonna work. So address the stress. That's the first thing, right?
Yeah. I mean, and it's when you consider that educating your clients as a coach is a large portion of effective long-term development. How do you balance out giving your clients what they want with what they need?
It's a great question. I think you got to speak their language at the end of the day. A client comes to you and they want to lose X amount of pounds. They want to get that little inner thigh gap between. I love that one, man. Or, or they have the performance goals. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And you've heard it all, right? So you got to speak that. You speak to their wants, and that's okay. And I think it's a kind of a temporary thing as a coach. But in a way, it's almost like a form of displacement, in the sense that you eventually start shifting their lens to say, hey, let's look at this PR that you hit over here. Let's look at the things that you're doing really well, right? This awesomeness-based coaching approach that I love from, Precision Nutrition and the professionals over there. Just looking at what they're doing really well and almost getting them, in a sense, to become more focused and passionate about those wins versus the small outcomes that may mean really nothing in terms of that inner thigh gap or the extra 2 or 3 pounds, right? So I think it's just a part of that journey, right? You're at their side, you're just guiding them there to say, hey, yeah, sure, your wants are still kind of in the on the map here, but in the meantime, here's one of the things that you're going to need to do in the meantime to get to that outcome. So how about we just focus on these things in terms of the needs, right? And let's just course correct as we go and see what happens, right? But I think it's both. I don't think that it's disregarding their wants and certainly not listening to them. It's speak that language, but obviously through education and experimenting and just really being open-minded and compassionate and understanding, you'll be able to give them what they need.
Yeah, very much so. So then you mentioned Precision Nutrition, you mentioned NASM, and you said there's a whole host of other organizations. And going back to the question, of there's a lot of different influencers and stuff like that. Who do you think are your biggest influencers that you, or your biggest influencers and mentors?
Biggest influences and mentors. Well, I'd have to say first, my community here is awesome. I mean, that's one of the beautiful things about having an online community. And one of the great things about, I think, say social media like Facebook, whatever it is that you can have these private communities and you're able to be inspired every day by, some of the things that they're doing. They're really the truly inspiring things that they're doing. But also, being able to be there when they do fall and when they do struggle, and to kind of let them roll around in that poopy feeling for a little bit, and then kind of be there to pick them back up and see how they kind of brush off, and that's resilience right there, and I think to be able to see that every day, to have that opportunity like we've never had 20 years ago, whatever, is fantastic. So you're getting these little pings of inspiration, and I think so. A lot of my community is extremely inspiring to me, and it just keeps me going. But in terms of my mentors, the people that I've looked to, and for guidance, I mean, it starts obviously with my parents. Growing up in Las Vegas and working different jobs that required different hours. And when it came to the hotel industry, working in design, like my father, just having that willingness to show up and just to show up every day and to just get the work done and to provide and to serve the family, but also just to be there as parents is, that's a huge emotional anchor for me that keeps me going. But at the same time, I think from more of a professional, maybe of a personal level, in terms of mentors, I mean, I've got a few mentors here, in Hong Kong that kind of coached me in terms of being a coach. And then I've got another one in terms of just as a personal guide, as a therapist back in Las Vegas that I've been working with for about 5 years now. And I think Phil Caravigio said, PN said it perfectly. He said, the better the athlete, the more coaches they have. And I think it's very much the same with us, right? I think the better you get or the better you want to become, the more coaching and guidance and I think direction you need, right? So, and for a long time, I was not always like that, Andrew. Growing up, I was very selfish, very stubborn, and I didn't ask for help, and it was only once I started really stopping and looking around and realizing that a lot of the people that I really respected that had kind of the best worldview and really at some level, at some point in their lives, got guidance. So it kind of started from there. So I mean, the list is can go on for sure.
Yeah, and that's it's so funny that you point to the evolution of a coach inside of that. So that's really, I guess, the last question that I'll take up your time with is like, what has been your evolution as a coach in terms of basic themes that you thought were important?
That's a great question, and a really, really good, great question. I'm going to do my best with this one, but I think as a person, I mean, we're as a coach, we're always going to want it more than the client. I think we're always going to want them to change their body a certain way or hit that PR or get that last extra rep in. We're always going to want it more than them. And I think for me, especially back in the day, it was very much, I struggled with that. I really struggled with that in the sense that when it didn't work, I tended to look externally, and it was their fault, or if it was obviously something that they didn't do right. They didn't follow the coach's directions, wherever that was, right? So, and I think obviously the more you go down that rabbit hole of coaching and kind of the psychology of it all and the behavioral side of everything, you realize that they are doing their best. That maybe today is their best. They're trying their best today, and this is the best you're going to get based on the experience, the knowledge, and that they have on that day. And I think we have to be understanding of that and empathetic in that and compassionate of that. to truly be, great coaches, to really change people's lives. Because if not, these people end up falling back into a sea of other, I think, clients who just have a very bad taste in their mouth, and they feel like a failure. They feel like they, excuse my language, they feel like they fucked up. Mm-hmm. And I think it's, at the end of the day, they're paying us to be there, to be a guide for them, to really understand where they're at. And I think if we get that, especially me, like back in the day, once I started removing that, that self-talk, and I just was in it, I was present with them in that moment, it allowed me to be a better and more compassionate coach.
Yeah. And that's really,
I hope that makes sense. Sense.
Absolutely. Well, because I think about coaching in certain orders. Of lowest order coaching is giving a prescription with no feedback, just 100% execution. And then, you look at the long term, and then it becomes mostly about managing people's stress. So, it's kind of like we're very aligned in our philosophy. Where you look externally initially and you're like, God, yeah, you did. Just use our language, like fucked up. And and it's like, well, now that when you give a prescription, it's like, where did I mess up that I didn't meet them?
That's it. And that can be so confronting sometimes, as you look back and you can see the red flag. You see where you drop the ball, and you're like, oh, and you just feel terrible. You know what I mean? And I don't think it's ever too late either at that point. It's just about owning up to it and really, apologizing, saying sorry, and just trying to get that journey going again. But no, I think one of the approaches that we found very effective, and I use with my team, is this dialing up and dialing down approach. Make things easier, and I think John Goodman at John Goodman Consulting, it said it perfectly. I think I read one of his books recently, was saying, people don't want the best or the experts anymore. They just want someone to make their life easier. Mm-hmm. And I truly believe in that. Coming from Las Vegas, the hotels, the hospitality there, they are all about making your stay as easy, as enjoyable, as stress-free as possible. Mm-hmm. And I think I like to have that kind of, when it comes to how we run the business in terms of serving our clients and our community, is trying to make their lives easier, but at the same time making things easier. If they can't have this amount of protein or this amount of starchy vegetables or non-starchy vegetables or what have you that week because of other demanding, competing demands, dial it down, make it easier for them so they don't feel like a failure, maximize their success.
Absolutely. So you would say that it sounds like the experience of themselves is one of the crucial cornerstones of the Kaizen and continuous progress there, what I hear in that. So
yeah, absolutely.
Got it. Well, I don't want to take any more of your time. We are currently 9:37, so I'm going to go ahead and just ask if you have anything that you wanted to plug before we stop recording.
No, I think this was fantastic. I really appreciate it. Great questions, man.
Thank you.
And I'd love to catch up with you at sometime as well. I met with Patty when she was here in Hong Kong about a week ago. We had some great meetings, and she was telling me about you, and I could tell just by looking at your picture. It was like, he's a Hapa. He's also he looks half Korean, but I wanted to have a chat with you, so I'm glad we got to chat, Andrew. It was really nice to meet you.
Yeah, absolutely, Ryan. Well, hey, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now.